All right, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, that's right. We are back. This is the SuperCoach AFL podcast, your in and out guide to the greatest game on earth, AFL SuperCoach, because footy's back. And it's back properly this week. And so is your chance at winning the 50K. I am your host, Jaymz Clements. Joining me today, we've got three of the smartest people on earth when it comes to SuperCoach. We've got Al Paton. What's going on, Al?
Yeah, pumped. What is it? 2 days to go now until the first lockout of the season. So sort of like Christmas for us SuperCoach fans.
Christmas where you desperately trade, rage trade, angrily slap your laptop, that kind of Christmas. I love that. We've got Tim Michell over there as well. What's going on, Tim?
Okay, James. Yeah, hard not to overreact to what we saw in round zero, but looking forward to getting stuck into it all with you and Al and talking about how much the Blues are going to beat up Al's Tigers on Thursday night.
Checks out. We'll also bring on the Phantom later to talk all things rookie. But look, finally, every team actually gets a crack this week. I'm excited about this. Round one. No more of this opening round zero malarkey. But before we get into that, remember, for all the SuperCoach goodness, you got to sign up to SuperCoach Plus. It's been a lifesaver for me this week going, wait, how much did that guy score on the weekend? Oh, God, I got to check that out. And you can jump on tips.com.au to get all your tips in for round one. And for all the insights you need for SuperCoach, you can follow these two gentlemen on the old tweet machine. It's now called X, don't forget that, at @LSuperFooty for Al and at Tim Michell, which is spelled Michell. Because why not? And of course, codesports.com.au for all of the SuperCoach breakdowns. Right, before anything else, round zero's done. Thank you. Thank God for that. What did we learn from it, gentlemen? Al, take us away. What did we learn from round zero?
Those games didn't count, did they?
Not really.
That was just a kind of a, glorified preseason, and now we actually do the real thing this week, and I'm sure Richmond will actually roll out a proper team and actually put in a decent effort.
Well, that was how I felt, Al, when Carlton was 46 points down against Brisbane, and by the end of the night, round zero is the best thing that's ever happened. So we learned plenty, didn't we? Like there was a couple of rookies that jumped off the page, like Blake Howes from Melbourne. I think you've got to pick him now after he scored 91. Jaden Short, my feelings about him well and truly, Al, but he's in my team now because he absolutely pigged it for Richmond in the back line. Looks like there's going to be plenty of footy back there this year. And I only made a few changes in the end. I think I'm really happy with most of the team, but probably the biggest tick was Brody Grundy. Absolutely annihilated Max Gawn. And I think people were having doubts about him after his practice match game, but score of 139. He's going to be just about one of the most popular picks now this year.
Yeah, 100%. And I just think the danger is making too many changes when you've done weeks and weeks of research. You've got a team you like, and then you throw it all out the window and pick all these guys that you'd never thought of before last week. But then you have someone like Isaac Heaney just bursting out and playing like he did. It's hard not to try and find a spot for him. So I don't remember a year where I've thrown my team around as much as I have, and it's definitely far from settled. So lots of players still in contention. It'll be great to talk about a few of those today.
I think I'll tell you what, the one thing that I learned from round zero is that back every team that plays the Tigers. I'm sorry, Al, but geez, you gave up a fair amount of SuperCoach points there, I'll tell you. It's a feast against the Tigers, and that's kind of like a bit of a recurring theme, so just keep an eye on that. But you did say, let's look at some players. After round zero, what we've learned, who are your locks now? Let's go, Al. Who do you like the most after round zero? How are you feeling about this? After round zero, you went right. They're going straight in the team. They're not coming out.
Well, Tim mentioned Grundy, and I think he has to be in the ruck for everybody at only the $481,000. Ridiculous price for someone who's averaged 120 plus in the past, and he scored that well in round one, so or round zero, I should say. So we definitely know he can do it. So lock him in, throw away the key. I mean, Nick Dacos. There was some talk, some serious SuperCoach people who looked at the numbers and looked at the fixture and thought there was a theory going around that you could leave Nick Dacos out of your team and maybe get him in a few weeks after his bye, after a potential tag from
Wait,
Finn
wasn't
McGuinness.
That you?
At one stage I did toy with this idea, but after watching him the other night, you just have to pick him. I don't even think that was him at the top of his game, but he's playing as an inside midfielder now and just scores 130 on it. That's just a standard week for Nick Dacos. So it's going to be very hard to watch the footy if you don't have him in your team. And speaking of the Tigers and the Richmond backline, I think Josh Gibcus was the other one that I really liked. What he did, obviously had a few goals kicked on him, but as you mentioned last week, SuperCoach doesn't penalise you for that. There's going to be plenty of ball down there in the Richmond backline. He didn't have a heap of possessions, but he does win points for spoils, takes a couple of intercept marks, gets a couple of kick-ins. He's a really safe pick, I think, in defence on the bench, or you can start him on the field.
what was it, 76 points at 150K. You'll take that every day of the week from Gibkiss. Love that. Tim, who are your post-round 0 opening round locks?
Well, I think one of the things that I really like seeing, James, was Zach Williams back out there for Carlton. And I think through most of pre-season, we all thought that he was going to be an absolute lock in our teams because for 216K, how can you pass up a guy who's averaged 90 plus 3 or 4 times in his career? Great to see him back out there and great to see him get through more than anything else for SuperCoach and for Carlton's perspective as well. 73 points doesn't necessarily jump off the page, but if he's scoring 70 to 80 most weeks, he's going to make that 100 to 150K that we're looking for. So I think even though he's got that tricky round 2 bye, we've got to remember it's best 18 scoring in those early buys. And for round 2, there's not all that many players from Carlton or Brisbane that are popular in SuperCoach this year. So it's going to be pretty easy to cover Zach Williams. So I've locked him away. I've locked away Tom Green as well. I know we're going to talk captains later, but he's got that really friendly early draw. They come up against North Melbourne and West Coast, last year's bottom 2 in the first 2 weeks. And the Giants looked awesome against Collingwood in round 0 too. And Tom Green was at the forefront of that, wasn't he? Scoring 132 points. So I've locked Tom Green in, even though, like Zach Williams, he's got an early bye coming up in round 3. Less than ideal. They share a bye with the Gold Coast, and both of those teams have got some really good SuperCoach picks this year, but have to be a little bit selective about how I go with that. But Tom Green's one that I've definitely locked in, and another guy that's going to be on that round 3 bye that I think confirmed what we're all thinking, that he was going to be just about the best pick of the year. And it's ridiculous because he averaged 23 points a game last year, and that's Alex Sexton from the Suns. Thrown into defence by Damien Hardwick. That's been his big magnet move over the pre-season, and it looks like it's worked. He had 73 points, and at one stage he was just teetering, sort of sitting about 40 or 50 points, and I thought, look, that's not ideal, but we have to remember that he's not going to necessarily go back and absolutely dominate, and we're getting Alex Sexton for 133K, so if he's scoring 60s or 70s every week, can't pass that up.
I feel like Sexton, so the post-round 0 lock aspect, you look at Sexton, it's like, that is the exact reason that round 0 rules.
Yeah.
You just get a free look at Sexton and go, yep, locked in. Love that. For me, I was like, I've spent probably, 60 to 70 just total hours putting Lockie Whitfield in my team and then taking Lockie Whitfield out of my team. I again took him out this morning. I don't know what to make of this. Like, he tops the ton. You're feeling good. He's like, oh, just over 500K. But I'm feeling the squeeze in the back line, gentlemen. So I probably will go back and forth on this and probably eventually just lock him in before the end of this week once we find out from teams. But apart from that, it's Whitfield for me. Jaden Short, loving the vibe from Short, right? I think there's going to be plenty of disposals, the kick-ins as well there. Love a bit of Short. And Sam Flanders is one of my locks, of course, up front because I'm just struggling for forwards. But maybe we won't be. We'll talk about that in a second.
Maybe you throw to Tim in a second. I saw you looking up some kicking numbers for Shorty, but I mean, Lockie Whitfield, one of the great burn men of SuperCoach. We've picked him in the past and been absolutely torched by some weird injuries that he's managed to get, and then somehow he just gets put on a forward flank and stops scoring SuperCoach points. But we know what he can score, and under Adam Kingsley, once the Giants got rolling last year, he was one of the top scoring defenders, which flew under the radar a little bit, and he looked fantastic, which a lot of the Giants did. There's plenty of picks there, but again, it's just how many can you start given that they do have that early buy. But he could be a breakout player at a really good price.
I really like him. I think he's underpriced. Second half of the year last year, as you said, Al, 109 points he averaged when Adam Kingsley settled him down in defence. And we know that Leon Cameron liked to throw the magnets around, and that was a massive bugbear during his time as GWS coach. But Adam Kingsley seems to have really settled on the way that he wants that back line to look, and Lockie Whitfield's a big part of it. So I haven't been able to squeeze him into my team, but that's predominantly down to the fact that after last week, when I think I was spruiking this mid-price forward line where we had Nat Fyfe potentially at F1, I've had to go and spend a lot more money up forward, which means that when I was going to spend all my cash in defence and potentially have someone like Whitfield at, say, D3 or D4, I've had to be a bit more selective back there now.
And Shorty in for you?
Yeah, Jaden Short came in. I think, sorry to say, Albert, I think it's going to be a pretty long season for Tiger fans based on what we saw, at least in that first half. They were a little bit more competitive in the second half against the Suns. But saying that, they do get the cavalry back this week, Tom Lynch and Dusty Martin and Toby Nankervis potentially back this week as well. So I don't want to jinx Carlton because, for Jaymz and I's sake, we're hoping the Blues go 2-0 after round 1, which would be bizarre, but is potentially going to happen this week. I think Jaden Short with his sort of kick-outs and intercepts and stuff, and there was a couple of kicks he butchered as well. He could have scored much more than 130, so put Tom Stewart down to him, and I hate leaving Tom Stewart out, but I think Jaden Short's in for a pretty big year with so much ball in that Richmond defence.
He doesn't do many short kicks, does he? It's all those long kicks down the wing or burst, just booting it as far as he can.
Yeah, it's Luke Bryan
defence,
style. They'll just be kicking at 55,
really
60, well. And those are the ones that get big points.
I love that. I also love the idea that, I'm just, hashtag flaggers all the way already. Just pack her up. But 2-0, I'd take that too. Round 0 bust. Who were the biggest busts from opening round? I'll lead this one. My man. Whoa, Errol. Tim's wearing the shirt. We're right here. I was all in on the Errol Goulden train this preseason. He never left my team. And then he has one stinker where he drops, 77, scores most of that in the final quarter. And he's straight out of the team. And I'm like, I just don't believe all of a sudden. I'll get him back, but I just want to wait for that price drop. It's going to happen. It'll be there, and I'll feel much better. But Al, who was your round 0 bust?
Well, worth mentioning for people that obviously those scores didn't count for SuperCoach, but the prices, the scores will factor into player price movement. Yep. So like Tim mentioned, Blake Howes scoring 91 on debut, that'll his price will go up in a couple of weeks and that'll help him get a bit of a boost. So we already know that for some of these cheap guys. And then when you have players at the top end who were a bit underwhelming, and I'm sure Errol will still be a fantastic pick. He'll have a great season if you're prepared to lock him in and just ride out the year. I'm sure he'll be one of the top scoring midfielders at the end. But given that he's had that early lowish score, he will probably drop a little bit in price. So maybe he's one, and there's so many good players in there. You could start someone else and maybe look to grab Errol, maybe after his buy and when he might be a little bit cheaper. But Jack Billings was a guy that I had on my radar for most of the preseason. I thought he's exactly the sort of player Melbourne needed to improve their delivery going inside 50, and I think that was still an issue for them. But they gave him the sub-vest, didn't bring him on till late in the third quarter, and he couldn't get into the game at all. So again, we know he could even drop in value from 240,000. So if he does become part of their plans, we might be able to pick him up even cheaper in a few weeks. But given there's a lot of players in that price range, I think we can cross him off the list.
Do you think Billings is a case where they just sort of might work him into the game plan a little bit more and more and more as the season goes on?
Potentially, yeah. And as I said, that is still a problem for Melbourne about that connection piece, as they like to say, between, they obviously win plenty of the footy and they get it into their forward line, but turning that into scores is a real problem for them. And you would think that's an area he could help. Nice one. Tim, who was your round 0 bust?
Oh, I hate to say it. Boy, it was sad watching that Brisbane Carlton game and seeing Kadeem Coleman. That was just a freakish accident, like the way his legs sort of bent around one of the Carlton players, and since confirmed sadly that it's an ACL and he's out for the rest of the year. And I think in the value picks that I put together every preseason, he's been right up there all preseason. Looked like it sort of just under 400k was going to be a great pick, sort of taking on that little bit of extra responsibility in the Brisbane backline and coming off scores of 127 in the prelim and the grand final, where he's close to best on ground in both of those games. So
Andy was crushing it in this game.
Yeah, and he was looking really good too. I think he had 2 goal assists pretty early on, which he was looking like he was going to score 90 plus in SuperCoach and just about lock himself into a lot of teams. So really disappointed for the Lions and for Kadeem Coleman as well, but also for all the SuperCoaches that plan to get him in as well. I know the Phantom, who's coming on later, is pretty keen on Connor Buderick potentially as a sideways option, although you'll make about 90k by sort of downgrading Kadeem Coleman to him. But yeah, I've had to go down to a couple of the rookies in defence instead to fill that Kadeem Coleman hole.
Tough one. Same thing goes out for Doc for the Blues. That one was just a punch in the guts, wasn't it?
I'm trying to forget about that.
Brutal.
Just too sad.
There are a lot of questions around that Carlton midfield now with Doc and who might take that role, but we're going to find out a lot more, I think, on Thursday night.
Yeah, Carroll.
Well, potentially. He might be one of those round 0 midfielders that we're talking about a bit more, although we do get another look at him, Al, because the Blues got the bye in round 2, so I wouldn't be trading him in this week.
Happy days. Right, let's talk some forward primos, because, look, I think last week we talked about how just like there was a dearth of options.
Last week that didn't exist.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, rumours of their demise were greatly exaggerated apparently because forward primos are back, just like footy. Tim, can you take us through this? You got Luke Jackson, you got Flanders, stupid sexy Flanders, and Isaac Heaney, the Heen man. Like, who are we looking at? Who have you got?
Yeah, I'll mention the Burn man. Isaac Heaney is he was in about 3% of teams before round 0, and I think that's going to be closer to probably 50% of teams by the time that the Swans play later on this week. So yeah, it's so interesting to see his midfield role and just how effective he was in there as well. It wasn't just that he was playing more midfield minutes, which is sort of the factor that we've always been hoping for with Isaac Heaney, but he went in there and had such a big impact against one of the AFL's best midfields in Melbourne as well. I know Clayton Oliver not necessarily at full tilt, but Petrarca was there and Viney was up and going, and obviously Max Gawn as well. But yeah, Isaac Heaney was probably the best midfielder on the ground. So I've been trying to resist because, like a lot of people, I've been burned by him in the past. There's been times where I've traded him in based on the fact that it looks like he's getting that extra midfield time, then he goes and sits in the goal square, has no impact and scores 40, and you lose 100K and it's just an absolute disaster. But I think with the number of injuries that they've got at the Swans at the moment in that midfield, Taylor Adams is out, Luke Parker's out, Callum Mills we won't see for a while. I think this is a role that he's probably going to have for at least the first 4, if not first 6 weeks of the season. So hopefully gets us through those early buys and can be that forward premium that we've been searching for. But yeah, I've gone and locked in Flanders off the 124 that he scored on the weekend. He looked great. As much as anything, Damien Hardwick seems to have be looking at sort of a really similar centre bounce setup to what we saw last year from when Stuart Dew was coach and then when Stephen King was the interim coach as well. He's just got his 4 preferred midfielders. He's just going to go to Real, he's going to go to Anderson, he's going to go to Miller, and he's going to go to Flanders. And it's just going to be those 4 guys in there at different times. And Sam Flanders is probably the 4th banana in that midfield, but he showed like he can still score well. I think he had a lot of sort of score involvements on the weekend, which really boosted his score. But the big talking point, Al, and the one that we're still waiting on, because there's conflicting reports about how long Sean Darcy is going to be out, is Luke Jackson. If Luke Jackson is the number 1 ruckman at Fremantle for 4+ weeks, I think he's a must-have. But if Sean Darcy's back by round 3, then it becomes a whole other discussion. Do you want to be trading out a premium after a couple of rounds? We've got Luke Jackson there at the moment, but I really want to see the injury report from Freo to know how long Sean Darcy's actually going to be out for.
Yeah, we really need some, if anyone out there has some spies out down Fremantle way, can go and suss
Someone
out.
said 6 to 8, and then we hear less than a month.
Yeah.
Within about 15
So
months
last year when Darcy got injured at the back end of the year, I brought Jackson in and it was like he was amazing. I think he averaged about 120 points without Darcy, including a big 170 against Brisbane, who he plays this week, although I think it was Darcy Ford might have been running in that game. But it's a whole nother player when Sean Darcy's not there. But it's a question of how long is Darcy out for, and do you just get him for that early sugar hit? And I think it really, for me, I would love to get him through to round 6 to be able to cover
perfect,
Grundy and Gorn when they both miss with the bye. You could swing Jackson into the ruck, and I think you might have West Coast in one of those games, which traditionally give up a lot of points to ruckmen. So that'd be amazing. But if he doesn't quite get there, it becomes really tricky. And then, I don't know whether if you can pick all 3. I mean, Heaney's a bit of a sugar hit as well, given we don't know exactly what's going to happen when those Swans midfielders do start to come back. But given how good he was on the weekend, I think it's going to be hard to really push him full-time out of the midfield.
Is he a sugar hit, though? Are they going to knock him out after the way he played on the weekend?
Exactly. I don't know.
That's the other question.
Will. So I think I'd probably have Flanders. I've picked Flanders because I've had him pretty much the entire preseason. And as you said, what he did against Richmond confirmed that for me.
I think I could have probably had 30 disposals against Richmond on the weekend. Though.
Heaney just ahead of Jackson, I think. But yeah, we really just – it'll go right down to the wire if we can find out exactly how long Sean Darcy might be out for.
I think you heard it here first. Al needs Freo to sit the big man, Sean. You can't risk him. Sit him down for at least 2 months. I'm just saying that. You got Luke Jackson, his amazing hair. Come on, man. We're going at this from 2 different prongs.
And he is a big, big man, Sean Darcy. So
they're big knees, aren't they?
Exactly.
You think it would take a while to
Got to look after him. Simple as that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Bring in the Phantom to talk all things, rookies, everything else out there that he's looking at. And then we'll be back with a quick fire round right after this. All right, now dialing in from parts unknown, it's the Phantom. That's right, he's just written a massive rookie rankings breakdown. And I'll tell you what, Al, this year, how thankful are we for these rookie rankings? Because it's chaos out there, right?
Well, I can't remember a year where we've had this many rookies to choose from. Normally this time of year we're just scratching around for any news of a potential cheapie that we can stick on our bench, but there's just so many good names and some that are quite high price maybe, that more than we would be prepared to pay in the past, but they all sound like they're going to be really good.
Yeah, it's amazing, Al. Apart from sort of a couple of obvious ones that the Phantom's going to run us through, like there's hopefully going to be some points of difference out there that people hit on that are going to make this year's rookie crop really interesting.
Righto, Phantom, take us through it. You've just written out a massive breakdown of all of these rookies. So let's start in defence. Who is your standout that is just not going to leave your team for round 1?
Thanks for having me. I'm here for the people. As all super coaches know, as Al mentioned, there's a lot of names being thrown around, but this is the time of the year we need to decide on who to pick, and this guy sort of come from nowhere a little bit. Didn't feature on these rankings last month, but Blake Howes from the Demons played last Thursday against Sydney, scored 91 Supercoach points, had a game-high 12 intercept possessions. It's nothing out of the ordinary here. I think you almost just have to pick him now. We know cash is king in Supercoach. He's already guaranteed to make some early money with that 91-point score in his cycle. The D's raved about him. Max Gorn raved about him after the game. So Blake Howes, 123K defender, has to be on your bench, I think.
Love that. All right, what about in the mids? We'll work our way to the rucks because I know that Al's got some thoughts on the rucks, but what about the mids?
Al can definitely take away on the rucks. An interesting conversation there down at Tigerland as well. So Al, the man. But the midfield, we know the big points, the big cash for the rookies is normally in the midfield. No difference this year. Some big names at the top end of the price bracket. Riley Sanders from the Bulldogs, 184K. Everyone knows him, but everyone has to have him. A massive junior career in Supercoach, 30 touches in the Bulldogs practice matches. A no-brainer for your field. Colby McKerch, everyone knows about him too. But a couple of other names that might not be in as many teams. Matt Roberts from the Swans, who was good last Thursday against Melbourne as well. 76 points for him. Put him on your bench at the very least. Another one not to forget about. Now, he might not be named, limited game time in the practice match, but Sean Manor, we spoke about him a lot earlier in the preseason, mature ager from the VFL. Didn't get much game time in the practice match, but shown he can score. Cheap, 117K, so look for him closely if he does surprise on the Geelong team sheet on Thursday night.
Love that. How about the forwards? You can actually throw Manor up to his Manor from Werribee. I love this because you can throw him mids or forwards. What do you reckon there, Phantom?
You can. An important link Manor could be, but yes, you could put him on either bench and switch him around because you've got to cover those early premiums in Supercoach. You've got to have a deep bench. But another obvious one to start with, you have to pick Alex Sexton. It's not a thing we thought we'd be saying. I'm sure it's been discussed a lot, but Alex Sexton, the number one Supercoach rookie, a 30-year-old in his 8th season, doesn't normally scream cash cow and pick me. But here we are in 2024, and Dimmer Hardwick has transformed the forward. He's now a defender. You have to pick him at 133K. One also to set you apart a little bit, look for the team sheets again on Thursday night from over here in SA. Jackson Mead, 199K, a little bit more expensive than a few of the other names, but he could set you apart. Scored 112 points in the practice match against the Dockers. Sam Powell-Pepper's suspended for the early rounds, and Ken Hinkley likes him. Ken Hinkley, the coach, likes him in the midfield too. So if he does get a game, look for him to feature in that midfield. And as Ken has been good to Supercoaches before, he doesn't just drop the kids just because of the last one in. So Jackson Mead, looking for something a little bit different up forward.
Love that one. All right, Al, talk us through this ruck quandary when it comes to the rookies.
Well, it's really a question of do you pick the guy who is going to play or at least has played one game already, Sam Naismith at the Tigers, mature ager, great story. I think it was his first game in about 4 years, former Swan, has done a couple of knees in that time, came back through the VFL. Richmond picked him up and he scored 93. So great score first up. Probably going to ensure a nice little price bump for him when those price changes come around. But the problem is Toby Nankervis is in the wings, potentially coming back in this week or maybe the week after. What do the Tigers do with Naismith? Do they play both rucks? If Naismith goes back to the VFL, how long until he comes back in? Would you pick him, Tim, just thinking, well, at least he's a chance to come and play at some stage and he might make us some cash? Or are there other options? You just save money and pick one of these 102,000 guys?
Yeah, I just can't see, like you would have a better insight to this than me, Al, but I can't see a world where Naismith and Nankervis play in the same team. Like they're both out and out ruckmen, aren't they? Like I wouldn't really fancy one of them sitting in the goal square and bobbing up to kick 2 or 3 goals a game, albeit it would be handy to have that extra target alongside Tom Lynch. But so I think Samson Ryan, even though he's pretty poor and got subbed out against the Gold Coast, I think he'll stay in because he's that bit more versatile as the backup, which means as soon as Toby Nankervis proves his fitness, Sam Naismith's out of that team, which is unfortunate because played quite well and battled manfully against Jared Wicks, which is not an easy task, especially with the sort of new ruck rules advantaging those ruckmen that have got a decent reach. So I think he did quite well. And if he stays in, there's a case for picking him. But yeah, I'm more likely to go down the loophole, I think.
And Phantom, the other advantage of a lot of those 102,000 rucks is that they have dual position flexibility, which could be a big impact when it comes to, we talked about these forward primos that have all suddenly burst onto the scene and whether we can pick Luke Jackson or not. But one advantage to picking someone like him is that he could swing up into the rucks, in which case Naismith's not going to help you in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And he's your option if you want that point scoring guy. I think there's probably enough to go on despite that risk of Nankervis returning. But Colin Livingston from the Eagles, great fixture. I think the Eagles only play about 8 times on a Sunday before their round 14 bye. We know that helps for loophole purposes. Liam Reedy, though, if you are after a different point scoring option to Naismith, 123k ruckman from the Dockers. Word out west is they've been training those two big men all summer. So with Darcy out, could Reedy come in to help Luke Jackson in the ruck? Might not be your Naismith type scoring given his number one role, but if you're after some points on the bench and some coverage and you're not starting Jackson, maybe it's his teammate Liam Reedy.
Love it. There you go. Was there anything else you wanted to plumb the brains of the Phantom for, Al? What do you got?
Well, I just think touch very quickly on the fact that I think we've seen a hint of the Phantoms team going down this road, and I think a lot of super coaches are thinking about it, is spending more money on the bench than what we would have in the past. When you look at a guy like Charlie Lazaro's 180 grand or Matt Roberts 150 or Henry Huswaite 180,000. Normally you don't want that amount of cash sitting on your bench, but is it different rules in 2024?
I think so. All those guys in my team at the moment, I think given there's so many value options around in the midfield and especially in the forward line, you do have that extra cash, and we know the premiums, some of the opening round premiums are going to miss over the first 6 weeks. So yes, it's best 18 scoring, but you still need that coverage. You've got a full team. You're obviously your lower scores, your higher scores will drop off at the end if you've got the coverage. And I think it's worth paying up for them. They've shown, and we're not just paying up for the sake of it. These guys, Lazaro and your Huswaites, have shown they can score. They've shown there's going to be a role for them. So spend up big. Different thinking this year, but it's a different year, especially with those early buys.
Amazing. Love that. You can hear him every week. It's the Phantom. Thanks for jumping on, Phantom. That was awesome.
Pleasure, guys.
All right, that was some awesome insight from the Phantom. Now, Tim, Al, it's time for the quick fire round. Let's make it quick. Who is one player who is not going to budge from your team going into round one? Tim.
Tom Green.
Checks out. Al.
Mark Bontempelli.
Ooh, really? 724? I don't know.
He's worth it.
I'm wavering on the Bont. Just soon. Fife or no Fife? Tim.
No Fife.
Al.
Hang up.
I started Fife and Flanders last year and it was an absolute disaster. I think I am going to start Flanders again. I can't do it with both, so no Fife.
Checks out. One of two. One player or spot that you're still tossing and turning over, Tim?
D2, I've got Jaden Short there, but I really like your man, Lockie Whitfield, James, and I think it's going to go down to the wire of which of those two I pick.
Nice one. What about you, Al?
For me, I've got Riley Bonner in my midfield, which I never would have thought, a month ago. He hasn't really got a great Supercoach scoring pedigree, and I admit when I saw him taking kickouts for the Saints in the practice match, I had to Google him to remind myself that, he got picked up in the preseason draft. But I did watch both of those games, and the eye test says he's absolutely flying. He can score over 100. He's only 280K. I just don't know if I'd trust it, but he's there right now.
I'll pay that. Mine is the Wardlaw. He's like a weird price, the 365, but he could just go bang. But I'm so nervous about it. I'm nervous about every and all North players, obviously, but Warlord, I'm all over it. Love a good Wardlaw. Right, it's a game of names. Either or. Simple as this. I'm going to throw out two names to both you gentlemen. Who are you taking head-to-head to put them in a team, a prospective team, an ideal team? Who are you going to take over the other one? We're going to start with you, Tim. Matt Rowell or Took Miller?
Took Miller. Just got more proven pedigree in Supercoach.
Al?
Yeah, Took. Love
that. Matt Roberts or Caleb Windsor, Tim?
This is actually one I had to think about, and I've had Matt Roberts most of preseason, and he looked great against the D's. So Roberts, and I'm reluctantly leaving Windsor out.
Ooh, tough one. Al?
Yeah, I wasn't on the Matt Roberts train, but my colleagues here have talked me into him. I'm sure the Phantom is all over it, but big junior numbers and a great role at halfback for the Swans.
All right, and then the big one. I mean, this is an easy one for me. Clayton Oliver or Tom Green? Tim?
I mentioned Tom Green's great draw at the start of the year, and I think more than anything that sort of outweighs sort of the potential point of difference that you get with Clayton Oliver. Normally this time of year he's in about 40 or 50% of teams, which he's going to be in under 5%, which is great. Great if you're sort of picking him up as that point of difference. But I think more than anything, we just want to see Clary back out there and playing his best footy for all the sort of well-documented issues that he's had. So, but definitely Green because he's the safer of those two.
Al?
Yeah, Green's in my starting team, but I will be watching Clary. If he can just work his way into full fitness and form in 5 or 6 weeks, he could be an amazing pickup. Round six for the Ds.
So straight after that.
So Green, I feel like, is let down by the simple fact that he's named Tom Green. Like, it hurts. If he had like a much more memorable name and he wasn't on the same team as Toby Green, we'd be laughing. Yeah. They're spelled different. I don't care. You hear Green, you hear GWS. It's like, come on, man. Which one are we talking about? Give me Tom. He's awesome. But the big question is, let's do it. Round 1. Who's your captain for this week, Tim?
I hate to just be barking up the same tree, but I think Tom Green is so... I know we talked about him a lot, but when you look at that early GWS, I think I'll captain him the first 2 weeks. So probably have a look at a vice captain in Nick Dacos because Collingwood plays early enough in the round that I can do that on Friday night against Sydney. And I know he hasn't had the best record against the Swans, but that's because Ryan Clark's been there and has just sat in his pocket and they've tried to rough him up. I think they'll probably try something similar, but I don't see any obvious tagger in that Sydney Swans team to go to Dacos. And I think with Sydney's slightly depleted midfield that Dacos should go pretty well and probably score around his 120, 130 like he does most weeks. But yeah, Tom Green against the Roos at NG Stadium. I think he's got huge upside out there at, what are they calling it now? The Cow Paddock. Mason Cox scored it out in Western Sydney. So yeah, I think Tom Green will just annihilate North Melbourne. He'll go 150 plus.
Nice one. Al?
Yeah, I mean, I like both of those, but a couple of other names maybe to keep in mind. The Bont has a pretty good record against the Demons. They play on Sunday. And actually, Max Gawn has put up some really big numbers against Tim English in the past. English is like a great scorer around the ground, but he doesn't win a heap of hit-outs, and that's where Max Gawn can really get on top of him. And after a poor score last week, Melbourne captain, they need to bounce back. He's probably got a point to prove.
He'll be smarting this week, I reckon.
Yeah, so I like Max Gawn there. And if you've got Zach Butters, they play the Eagles on Sunday.
Oof.
That's the one I'm really scared about not having Zach Butters in my team. Because everyone went away from him when he did that ankle, and they only put him on the sidelines for precautionary reasons, but his ownership went from 50% to about 15%, and he could come out and score 180 this week, couldn't he?
Butters could also win a Brownlow. And away we go. I think my vibe is this as well. I'm like trying to figure out if I go Tom Green with the vice, because I am worried about Dacos against the Swans as the vice, and then loophole it. So yeah, I either have whether it be Bont, Trark, or Gawn in that Bulldogs Demons game. So chaos week. I love it though. Let's do it though. The other big ones. One bold prediction for round 1. What have we got here, Tim?
Jeez, a bold prediction. Put us on the spot here, James. I'm going to say, and I'm just looking at my team at the moment, I think Nick Martin to go 120 plus against the Hawks. But in that game as well, and this is a point of conjecture in my team, tossing up who's going to be the D6, I think with the way Hawthorn's team sets up, they don't necessarily have all that many key forwards and certainly ones that I think will concern Essendon. I think Zach Reid for sort of a score 70 plus to potentially be our on-field D6 this week might be a good shout.
I've already got him at D6. I love that. Great to hear. What about you, Al?
You mentioned the bit of worry about North and how many North guys we can pick, and I've got 3 or 4 of them in my team at the moment. There's others that have come under consideration, and just looking at that fixture coming up against the Giants, it could be a tough week for some of those North boys. I mean, I guess there'll be a bit of footy in the back line, but I don't think Zach Fisher will be running around getting 36 uncontested possessions at NG Stadium, as you say. It doesn't necessarily mean they're bad picks, but might be a bit of a rough start for some of those North boys.
Love it. All right. Surprise rank 'em. Here we go. Blind rankings. Let's go. A couple of mid-forwards that are mid-priced. Bit of a weird one. We've got Fife, we've got Jordan, we've got Harms, and we've got Bonner. How would you rank them, Al? 1 through 4.
At the moment, Bonner's the only one in my team, so I'll put him number 1. I'd put James Jordan second, although I currently don't have him. I'm just a little bit worried about having too many Sydney players. That's going to be a hard buy in round 5 when Sydney and Collingwood are both out, so we'll have a few players missing, but I think he's going to be a good scorer. And then maybe Fife and Harms at the bottom of that little pile.
Tim?
I like James Jordan. I'm worried about not having him in my team. I think he presents sort of real value at about sort of 280K. I think he's going to average 80, 85 and play a pretty important role for the Swans. So I'll go him. But yeah, I was doing our predicted team for the Saints, and I was surprised by how many injuries they've got actually. And Riley Bonner, especially if Jack Sinclair's not back this week, he's missed both their preseason games. I think he could be a really important piece too. So I'll just flip Al's rankings there, and I'll go Jordan Bonner. Fife's probably got more upside than James Harms. Yes, he's got the injury risk, but he can score probably a lot better, whereas I think Harms will probably go 70 to 80 max most weeks. So 5-3 and then Harms.
Nice one. Good stuff. I'm now on the Bonner train. Jeez, I'm going to have to finagle that one. Then the final one, the head-to-head, pitting Tim against Al. Al against Tim. They've staked a flag. We've got Caulfield versus Howes. Make your case, Al. Who has the better week in round one?
Well, in those early, the round one's a classic. It's always a bit of a rookie roulette, as we say, when you've picked 3 or 4, cheap players and you've got to put one of them on the field and trying to nominate who's the one who's going to score the best. It's a bit of guesswork involved, it's fair to say, but I'm going to start Nick Caulfield in my final spot on the field in defence this week. Former top 10 draft pick. He just sort of eased his way in the practice match with a sort of a 50, 60-point game, but I think he's got the potential to sort of score that 80-odd points most weeks. Howes was really good in the D's game last week, but I think I'm going to put my flag on Nick Caulfield this week.
And Tim, you're going Howes?
Yeah, I really like Blake Howes. Hadn't seen him play before, but I thought he slotted in really nicely to that Melbourne defence. And the reason that I like him over Caulfield, Caulfield's got more experience at AFL level, but Howes has got all those defensive pieces around him, so he doesn't have to necessarily take any of the big dogs because he's got Lever, he's got May supporting him. They've got Judd McVie back there, even though Jake Bowie got injured. But I think because all these other guys are there and Howes can just fly a little bit under the radar, might still pick up a few of those intercept marks. Seems to kick the ball pretty well too. And after a score of 90, it's pretty hard to bench him.
Love it. All right, there you go. We're going to track this throughout the season as well. Who's made the best call out of these two? Caulfield versus Howes. Love this.
I don't think it'll be me.
Right. That's it though for the round one preview. I can't wait. All of the games. Just hook this to my veins. But remember to dig into all things SuperCoach with Twitter, YouTube, IG, TikTok. What else have you got on there? SuperCoach Plus. You can follow both these gentlemen on X. For all the insights you need, obviously, smash code SPORTS. Jump in on tips.com.au is where I get your tips in. And that's like for real this week as well, right? Like tips started last week. I hope you're on top. I went absolutely horrible. I cooked it.
Yeah, same. I don't think you lose much by if you even just didn't even sign up in time for last week. You're not far behind because it was not an easy week.
Yeah, you're going to make up one to top me. Exactly. So great job, everybody. But either way, thanks to Tim.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you, James. And just a reminder, everyone, it's a rolling lockout in SuperCoach. So Thursday night, things kick off for real, as you say, but you just have to have your Carlton and Richmond players locked in. The rest of the teams are still up and going, so you can trade players in and out across the weekend. They'll be locked in as their teams play.
Let's go short. And thanks to the fandom, of course. And I've been Jaymz Clements. Catch us next week. Happy SuperCoaching.